Some neighborhoods have their quirks: a house that never turns its porch light off, a man who walks his dog at strange hours, a woman who sweeps the same clean sidewalk every morning like she's trying to erase something invisible. For a long time, I thought the strangest thing on my street was the flowers. Every Tuesday, exactly at 3 a.m., perfectly arranged bouquets would appear on one specific doorstep. Not random wildflowers, not cheap grocery store bundles. These were professional, carefully chosen, fresh, always placed neatly, like someone had taken their time. Roses, lilies, baby's breath, sometimes even rare flowers I couldn't name, and they always appeared at the same house, mine. At first, I thought it was a mistake. The first time it happened, I woke up Tuesday morning, opened my door, and nearly tripped over a bouquet sitting right in the center of the welcome mat. No note, no card, just flowers. I asked my neighbors if anyone had dropped them off. Everyone shrugged. I called the florist in town. They had no record of an order. I threw them away, confused but not scared. The next Tuesday, there were flowers again. Different arrangement, same perfection. By the fourth week, I stopped thinking it was a mistake. Someone was leaving them for me, but I didn't know why. I wasn't dating anyone. I didn't have enemies. I didn't even talk to most of my neighbors beyond polite waves. Still, every Tuesday morning, the flowers were there. After a few months, it became a street curiosity. Diane across the road joked, "Maybe you've got a secret admirer." The mailman laughed and said, "Oh, at least it's nicer than Bill's." But after a year, the joke stopped being funny because it never ended. No holidays, no breaks, no missed weeks. 12 years of flowers, always appearing sometime before dawn. And the strangest part, they never wilted. They were always fresh, as if they'd been cut hours before. It was like someone was keeping a schedule, a ritual. I tried staying awake once, determined to catch whoever was doing it. I made coffee at midnight, sat by the window with the lights off, watching the porch. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 2:45 a.m. My eyes burned. Then, without realizing it, I drifted off. When I woke up, the sky was gray and the flowers were on the mat. I hadn't heard a thing. After that, I tried motion lights. The flowers still came. I tried a doorbell camera, and it glitched every Tuesday night between 2:58 and 3:02, like the footage had been wiped. That was the first time I felt real fear. Not because of the flowers, because of the precision, because whoever was doing it didn't want to be seen. Years passed. I stopped throwing the bouquets away. It felt wrong, like rejecting something sacred. Instead, I started placing them in vases, lining them up on the kitchen counter like a memorial. Friends who visited would ask about them. I never had an answer. Eventually, the flowers became part of the house, like a haunting you learn to live with. Then, last spring, something changed. The bouquet was different. It wasn't bright. It wasn't colorful. It was white. All white flowers, arranged so perfectly, it looked like something you'd see at a funeral. And tied around the stems was a thin black ribbon. No note, just the ribbon. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room with every lamp on, staring at the front door. At 2:30 a.m., I heard the wind outside. At 2:45, I heard something else. Footsteps. Slow, careful. My heart started hammering. I crept to the window and peeked through the blinds. A figure stood at the edge of my yard, not rushing, not sneaking, just standing there, holding something. Flowers. Then, as calmly as if it were noon, the figure walked up my path. I held my breath. They knelt down, placed the bouquet on my doorstep, adjusted it so it sat perfectly straight, and looked up. Even through the darkness, I felt it. They were looking directly at my window, like they knew I was watching. I stumbled back, my pulse roaring in my ears. By the time I gathered the courage to look again, they were gone. But for the first time in 12 years, I had proof. The next day, I took the camera footage to the police. The officer watched the grainy clip twice, then frowned. "That's your neighbor," he said slowly. I blinked. "What?" He pointed at the screen. That's Martin Halden, lives 3 houses down. Martin. Of course. I knew him. Everyone did. Quiet man, late 50s, always kept his lawn trimmed, never caused trouble. He lived alone. I'd waved at him 100 times. He'd never once mentioned flowers. The officer asked if I wanted to file a report. I didn't know what to say. He wasn't breaking in. He wasn't threatening me. He was leaving bouquets. Still, something about it felt wrong. So that evening I walked to Martin's house. The sun was setting. Yet the street looked normal. Children's bikes lay in driveways. Sprinklers clicked softly. Martin answered the door after a long pause. Up close, he looked older than I remembered. His eyes were tired, rimmed red like he hadn't slept properly in years. Martin, I said carefully, we need to talk. He stared at me. Then his gaze drifted past my shoulder, toward my house, toward my doorstep. I was wondering when you'd come, he murmured. My throat tightened. Why have you been leaving flowers? Martin's face didn't change. She likes them, he said. Who? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer wouldn't make sense. He swallowed. My daughter. Silence stretched between us. I don't understand, I said. Martin looked down at his hands. His fingers were stained faintly, like soil under the nails. She died on that spot, he whispered. My stomach dropped. He lifted his eyes to mine. 12 years ago, right where your front step is now. Cold crept through my chest. There was an accident, he continued softly. A drunk driver. She was walking home from a friend's house. She didn't even see the car. His voice cracked slightly, but his expression stayed eerily calm. They built your house after. New owners, new paint, new doorstep. He smiled faintly. But the ground remembers. I couldn't speak. Martin leaned closer, lowering his voice. I come every Tuesday at 3 a.m. because that's when it happened. My skin prickled. I bring flowers because she loved them, he said, and because I have to keep her here. My mouth went dry. Keep her here? I repeated. Martin nodded slowly. People move on, he whispered. They forget, but I don't. His eyes sharpened, suddenly intense. If I stop, she'll be gone for good. A long pause. Then he said something that made my blood turn cold. I'm replanting her. I stared at him. What does that mean? Martin's smile widened just slightly. You haven't noticed? He murmured. The soil by your step. How soft it always is on Tuesdays. My heart slammed. Memories flashed. Muddy footprints. Dirt that never quite stayed packed. The faint smell of earth in the morning air. I'd always assumed it was rain. Martin tilted his head. I dig a little each week, he admitted. Just enough, so she can breathe. My stomach lurched. You're digging under my porch? I whispered. He nodded like it was the most natural thing in the world. She's down there, he said softly. Not all of her. Just enough. I backed away without realizing it. Martin's voice followed me, gentle. Don't worry, he said. She's growing. My legs felt weak. I turned and walked away, forcing myself not to run. Behind me, Martin called out, almost cheerfully. See you Tuesday. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my kitchen staring at the floorboards near the front door, imagining dirt beneath them, imagining empty space, imagining something waiting. At 2:59 a.m., I heard footsteps outside. Slow, careful. At exactly 3, something scraped softly against my doorstep. Then silence. I didn't look. I couldn't, because I knew the flowers would be there, perfectly arranged, freshly cut. And somewhere beneath my porch, the ground would be a little softer, like something had been disturbed, like something had been replanted. And the worst part is, even now, weeks later, every Tuesday morning the flowers still appear, and I still don't know if Martin is the only one leaving them anymore, or if something else has started coming up from the soil to accept them. The first time the police used the phrase dry runs, I honestly thought they meant training exercises, something harmless, something distant. Then the detective looked me in the eyes and said, he was doing dry runs of your murder, not in an alley, not on the street, inside your apartment while you were at work. And the part that still makes me sick is this. He knew my schedule better than I did. I live on the north side of Chicago, in a brick apartment building that looks like half the city. Narrow hallways, old locks, neighbors you recognize by footsteps instead of names. I lived alone, worked a normal office job, and kept a routine because routine felt safe. Up at 6:30, coffee, train, work, home by 6, grocery store twice a week. Same route, same habits. I didn't realize routine also makes you predictable. And it started with the ravine. Not a real ravine like a canyon, just a long, sunken strip of trees and weeds between two residential streets. There was a paved path cutting through it, technically a shortcut. I'd used it for years without thinking. Then one evening, in late September, I approached the entrance and my body tensed up for no reason at all. It wasn't even dark yet. A jogger passed. A man walked his dog. Still, I felt it. Sharp pressure in my chest, prickling along the back of my neck, like I was being watched. I stopped and looked down the path. Nothing, but something in me said, don't. So I stayed on the main street instead, took the longer way with more lights and traffic. I told myself I was being dramatic. The next day I tried the shortcut again, just to prove I wasn't paranoid. I made it maybe 10 steps before that same feeling hit me, stronger. I turned around and walked back out. That became my pattern for weeks. Every time I got near the ravine, my instincts screamed. Every time, I listened. It wasn't fear exactly. It was certainty, like my body knew something my mind couldn't see. Around the same time, I started noticing him. The grocery store was 3 blocks from my apartment. I went every Wednesday and Sunday after work because that's how my life worked. Same days, same aisles, same checkout line. That's where I first saw him. He wasn't striking. That was the problem. Average height, average build, clean clothes, forgettable face. The kind of person you'd pass on the street and never remember. But I kept seeing him, not right beside me, always just nearby. At the end of an aisle, pretending to compare labels. Near the fruit section, not picking anything up. Standing too still like he was waiting. The first time we made eye contact, he smiled. Friendly, normal. I smiled back automatically because that's what you do when you're alone and trying not to be rude. After that, he started appearing everywhere, not just in the store. Once I saw him across the street near my building. Another time, I caught him behind me on the sidewalk, half a block back. I kept telling myself it was coincidence. Chicago is a city. People share routes, but my instincts didn't buy it. Then I noticed something at my door. I have this old habit from living alone. I'd sometimes place a tiny strip of tape near the frame before leaving, just a quiet way to know if the door had been opened. One evening I came home and the tape was wrinkled. The door was locked. Nothing was missing, but the tape looked peeled and pressed back. I told myself I imagined it. I replaced it. 2 days later, it happened again. Locked door, no stolen items, wrinkled tape. That's when the paranoia stopped being theoretical. I checked windows. I double-locked. I left lights on. I started glancing behind me in reflections. I called my building manager. "These doors are old," he shrugged. "Tape won't tell you anything." I asked if maintenance had been inside. "Nope," he said. "I bought a cheap door alarm, the kind that screams if the door opens." That night it didn't go off, but the tape was wrinkled again the next morning. One Friday after work, I got off the train and felt that same prickling sensation from the ravine, except I wasn't anywhere near it. And I was walking on a busy street with restaurants and traffic. Still, I felt watched. I turned my head slightly. He was there, the grocery store man, across the street, half a block back. Not rushing, not chasing, just maintaining distance. I ducked into a convenience store and bought a bottle of water I didn't want. I waited a minute, then peeked out. He was still there, standing outside, looking in, pretending to check his phone. My mouth went dry. I left through the other door and looped around the block until I was sure he wasn't behind me. That night, I barely slept. Around 4 a.m., I heard a sound in the hallway outside my apartment. A soft scrape, then another, then a quiet click. like someone testing my doorknob. I froze so hard my muscles hurt. My brain screamed, "Call 911." But fear does this awful thing where it convinces you that moving will make it worse. Like motion will invite the danger in. I stayed still, holding my breath. After a long minute, footsteps retreated down the hall. Slow, unhurried, like whoever it was didn't need to rush. The next week, I called in sick one day. I didn't tell anyone why. I just needed to feel in control. I stayed home, blinds half closed, sitting at my kitchen table with my phone and keys like that meant anything. Around 1 p.m., someone buzzed my intercom. I didn't answer. A minute later, it buzzed again, then again, 3 times, spaced out like the person was testing. I stayed silent. Then I heard the building's front door open, which shouldn't have happened unless someone let them in. My heart started pounding. I crept to the peephole. Through the warped glass, I saw him, the grocery store man, standing in my hallway, staring at my door like he owned it. He didn't knock, he just stood there, listening. Then he turned and walked away calmly, like he'd confirmed something. That was the moment I stopped trying to rationalize. I called the police. 2 officers came, polite but unconvinced. They took notes, asked if he'd threatened me. "No," I said, "but he's watching. I know he is." They gave the usual advice: document it, upgrade your lock, call if he returns. Then they left. I felt stupid until 2 nights later when they came back. This time it wasn't 2 uniformed officers. It was a detective and another man in plain clothes. The detective asked to come in. His eyes scanned my apartment like he was checking corners. Then he asked, "Do you know a man named Eli Mercer?" I shook my head. He showed me a photo. My stomach dropped. Grocery store man. "We picked him up tonight," the detective said. "Breaking into another unit in your building." I whispered, "Did he steal anything?" "No," he said. "He walked through the apartment." My throat tightened. "Why?" The detective hesitated, then said, "We found notes, schedules, a map. He knew the days you went to the grocery store, the time you got home, the route you took." My hands went numb. "The ravine," I murmured. "You stopped using the shortcut," he said. "Yes." He nodded once, like that mattered. Then he said the word that broke something in my brain: dry runs. I blinked. "What?" "He was doing dry runs of your murder," the detective said. I laughed once, sharp and disbelieving, because it sounded too insane, but his face didn't change. "We believe he accessed your apartment multiple times while you were at work," he continued. My vision tunneled. "That's not possible. The door was locked." "He had a way in," the detective said. "We're still investigating," I whispered. "What do you mean? Dry runs?" The detective's voice stayed calm, which somehow made it worse. He would enter, walk through, stand in specific places. He timed things, where you'd come in, where you'd drop your keys, how long it would take you to reach your bedroom. I stared at my living room, suddenly seeing it as a stage. "He rehearsed," the detective said quietly. My stomach turned. "So he's been inside here?" The detective didn't say yes, he didn't have to. I asked the question I didn't want answered. Was he going to do it soon?" His expression hardened. "We believe he was getting closer." After they left, I sat on my couch until the sky turned gray. I didn't move. Every creak sounded like a footstep, because the worst part wasn't knowing he watched me outside. It was imagining him inside, standing in my kitchen, standing in my hallway, breathing the air I thought was mine, practicing, rehearsing. I moved out within a month. I don't take shortcuts anymore. And if you're wondering whether I ever felt safe again, the answer is complicated. I feel safer now, but I don't feel innocent anymore. Because once you learn someone can know you that well, your habits, your timing, your patterns, you realize something awful. Routine isn't just comfort, it's a blueprint. And somewhere out there are people who collect blueprints for fun. Subscribe for more nightmares. Your safest habits might be someone's plan. The first thing I noticed wasn't the microwave. It was the space. That wrong, impossible space between my driver's side door and the object sitting there, like it had been placed with careful precision. At first, my brain refused to process what I was seeing, because microwaves don't just appear in parking lots, not inches from your car door, not without sound, not without someone nearby. But there it was, a heavy old microwave oven, the kind with yellowed plastic and a dented metal shell, sitting so close to my driver's side door that I wouldn't have been able to open it more than a few inches. And the worst part was this: I'd only been inside the store for 3 minutes. This happened last winter, around 9 p.m. I remember because it was cold enough that the air stung when you breathed. And the parking lot was glazed with that thin layer of frozen grit that crunches under your shoes. I'd stopped at a small convenience store on my way home. Not a big chain, just one of those corner places with flickering lights, 2 aisles, and a bored cashier behind bulletproof glass. I parked in the front row because the lot was almost empty. There were maybe 2 other cars far off near the back, and the street beyond was quiet. I went in for one thing: a bottle of water. That's it. No browsing, no wandering. I even remember checking my phone as I walked in. 9:07. Inside, the store was bright and stale smelling. The cashier barely looked up. I grabbed the water, paid, and walked straight back out. I was gone less than 3 minutes. I know that because when I got back to my car and checked my phone again, it was 9:10, and that's when I saw it. At first, I thought my eyes were playing a trick on me. The object was low, boxy, and wrong against the dark pavement. Then my brain caught up. Microwave. Old, heavy, dirty, like it had been sitting in someone's garage for years. It was positioned perfectly beside my driver's side door, almost touching it. I stopped walking. My first thought was stupidly normal. Did I park next to someone's trash? But there was no pile, no other junk, just the microwave, alone, like a prop placed on a stage. I looked around immediately. The parking lot was empty. The 2 cars in the back were still there, unmoving, no headlights, no doors open, no people. The street was empty too. No one walking away, no one loading something into a truck, no sound of an engine starting, and just cold air and the faint buzz of the store sign. I stood there with my keys in my hand, suddenly aware of how exposed I was. A microwave isn't light. Even a small one weighs maybe 40 or 50 pounds. This one looked older, heavier, the kind with thick metal inside. Someone had moved it, and they had moved it fast, and somehow, silently, I walked closer slowly, like it might explode if I startled it. The microwave was filthy, but not wet. No snow on top, no frost, which meant it hadn't been sitting there long. It had been placed there during the exact window I was inside. I bent down and stared at it. The door was taped shut with gray duct tape, layers of it, like someone didn't want it opening. That made my stomach tighten. I straightened up and looked back toward the store. The cashier was still behind the counter, he watching TV. I pushed the door open and walked back inside, trying to sound casual even though my pulse was loud in my ears. "Hey," I said to the cashier. "Did you see someone put something next to my car?" He glanced up, annoyed. "What?" "A microwave," I said. His expression changed slightly. Confusion. "A microwave?" "Yeah, right next to my driver door. It wasn't there when I came in." He shrugged slowly. "I didn't see anything." "Does the store have cameras?" I asked. He pointed vaguely at the ceiling. "Yeah, but they don't work half the time." That didn't help. I walked back outside. The microwave was still there, perfectly placed. I circled my car, checking for anyone crouched nearby, anyone hiding between vehicles. Nothing. The lot was dead. I pulled my phone out and considered calling someone. But what would I even say? "Hi, someone put a microwave next to my car?" It sounded ridiculous, so I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed it. The moment my hands touched the sides, I realized just how heavy it was. The cold metal bit into my palms. I grunted, lifting it an inch off the ground. It was at least 50 pounds. I dragged it away from my door, muscles straining, and set it down several feet away. The duct tape held tight. The microwave made no sound except the scrape of rubber feet against pavement. I stared at it, breathing hard. Then I noticed something that made my throat go dry. The microwave's power cord was missing, not unplugged, cut. The end was jagged, like it had been severed with scissors. Why would someone cut the cord off? I backed away from it. My instincts were screaming now, loud and clear. Hey, don't open it, don't touch it, just leave. I got into my car through the passenger side, climbing awkwardly over the center console because I didn't want to stand near that thing any longer than necessary. I started the engine, headlights washing over the empty lot, and that's when I saw it. A third car, not parked, idling, at the far edge of the lot, half hidden in shadow near the dumpster. I hadn't noticed it before. Its headlights were off, but I could see the faint glow of the dashboard. Someone was inside, watching. My heart slammed. The car didn't move. It just sat there, engine running, like it had been waiting. I threw my car into reverse and backed out fast, tires crunching on ice. The idling car stayed still. Then, as I turned toward the exit, its headlights flicked on, bright, sudden, blinding, and it began to follow. Not aggressively, not speeding, just following at the exact same distance, like a leash. I drove down the main road, hands shaking on the wheel. I kept checking my mirror. The car stayed behind me. I turned right. It turned right. I turned left. Turned left. My mouth went dry. This wasn't coincidence. I didn't go home. Couldn't. I wasn't going to lead them to my apartment. So I did the first thing I could think of. I drove toward the police station downtown. The moment I made that turn, the car behind me hesitated, then slowed, then turned off onto another street, disappearing into the dark. I didn't breathe until it was gone. I parked outside the station for 10 minutes, just sitting there staring at my steering wheel, trying to convince myself I hadn't imagined it. Eventually, I went home, but I didn't sleep. The next morning, I went back to the convenience store in daylight. The microwave was gone. No sign it had ever been there. I went inside and asked the cashier again. He looked at me like I was insane. Microwave? He repeated. Man, I don't know what you're talking about. I asked about the cameras. He sighed. They don't record. Owner's too cheap. I walked outside, staring at the spot where it had been. Nothing. Just pavement. I told myself to let it go. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe someone dumped it there for a second. Maybe then, 2 days later, I found something in my mailbox. A single sheet of paper. No envelope, just folded once. Inside was a printed photo. My car. In that parking lot, taken from behind. The microwave sitting beside the driver door. And in the corner of the photo, barely visible, my own face, reflected in the driver's side window, staring at it. The timestamp in the corner read 9:09 p.m., 1 minute before I walked out. My hands went numb. I flipped the photo over. 2 words were written in black marker. Too slow. That was when I understood. The microwave wasn't random. It wasn't trash. It was a test. A demonstration. Someone proving they could place something inches from me without me noticing. Someone proving they could reach my car, maybe my door, maybe my life, in under 3 minutes. I called the police after that. I showed them the photo. They asked questions, took notes, promised to look into it. Nothing came of it. No footage, no witnesses, no explanation. Just an empty parking lot and a missing microwave. I moved shortly after. And not because of the microwave itself, but because of what it represented. That someone out there could do something impossible. Move 50 pounds of metal silently in seconds, just to remind me how fast things can change. And sometimes late at night when I park my car and walk away, I still look back, half expecting to see something sitting inches from my door, waiting, silent, perfectly placed. Subscribe for more nightmares, because some warnings arrive without a sound.